what actually is multiplication? It is not repeated. Is it not repeated addition? And what does the multiplication in F equals M multiplied by A mean? Well, you are right, Atishai. Multiplication is nothing but repeated addition. If we say 2 times 10 is 20, you're basically adding 2 10 times. So that is the simple thing about multiplication. It is nothing but repeated addition. That's how little children are taught. You start adding it together, and that's how you get an intuitive understanding of what multiplication is. At least if you're teaching a child properly, then that's how you explain it to them. So it becomes intuitive. What does the multiplication in F equals M multiplied by A mean? So what this equation that you've shown over here, F equals MA, it expresses the Newton's second law of motion, right? What it says is that the acceleration produced on a mass is proportional to the force that's applied on the mass. And these are vector quantities. Acceleration has a direction, and so does the force. Now, what is this? Is this multiplication? What is it? So let's break this equation down. It represents force, M represents mass, A represents acceleration. Now, in this equation, M is a constant. Every body has, in Newtonian physics, a constant mass. So this equation is basically to be understood in the context of a constant mass. And when you see M as a constant, this equation becomes an equation of proportionality. It says that it says that acceleration and force are proportional to each other, and the proportionality is dependent on the amount of mass that a body has. Let's break it down further. Let's say I have an object that has 1 kilogram of mass. Its mass is 1 kilogram. And let's say I apply a force to this object, which produces an acceleration of 1 meter per second squared. Okay? 1 kilogram mass, and I apply a force to this object, which produces an acceleration of 1 meter per second square. So F equals 1 kilogram times 1 meter per second square, which is 1 Newton, which is the unit of force. So if the mass was 2, then F would be 2 newtons. If the mass was 10 kilograms and I'm applying a force that causes an acceleration of 1 meter per second square, then the force is 10 newtons. So that is a proportionality. So this equation expresses the proportionality between force and acceleration and the resultant acceleration. So that's Newton's second law of motion. And so it's a very good question. This is how you clarify these topics. Right? This is proportionality, and it's a vector proportionality. I will not go into what vectors are. Vectors are directional quantities. So acceleration is something that happens in a specific direction. It doesn't happen in all directions. And forces too. The resultant force on a body is always in one direction. Forces may come from the resultant force may be the sum total of many different forces, many different directions, but the sum total is always in one specific direction. And that is the direction in which the acceleration also takes place. So I hope that clarifies, and you can study that further if you look up Newton's second law of motion.